A millionaire, weary of being valued for his wealth alone, devised an elaborate test for his former fiancée and his son's new nanny, armed with 2 unlimited black cards. Little did he know, the nanny's choices would nearly bring him to tears. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from, and be sure to rate this story from 0 to 10 at the end. Enjoy! Robert Marshall was a man drowning in the shallow end of relationships. Every smile, every touch, felt transactional. He longed for genuine connection, a sentiment that extended beyond his bank account. That particular evening, after a profoundly disheartening dinner with Bianca, a model whose face graced magazine covers and whose heart seemed equally airbrushed, Robert slumped into his car, the leather sighing beneath him. "Nobody cares about who I am anymore," he muttered, staring out into the night. "Just about what I have." He started the engine, the low rumble a counterpoint to the storm brewing inside him. He remained still, lost in the stark reflection staring back from the rearview mirror. It was then, as if summoned by his despair, that an idea ignited within him, a test. Elegant in its simplicity, yet impossible to rig. Hours later, back in the sterile perfection of his minimalist home, he dialed Daniel, his closest confidant and ever-reliable assistant. "Daniel, I need to discern who genuinely cares about me. Is this a therapy session in disguise, or a social experiment ready to unfold?" His friend quipped, always ready with a playful jab. "A test," Robert declared, rising from his plush chair, his voice resolute. 2 unlimited black cards. One for Bianca and the other for Ashley. Daniel's eyebrows shot skyward. "Theo's nanny? You're seriously entrusting an unlimited card to your son's nanny?" "Precisely. I want to observe their actions, stripped of all constraints, when faced with such immense financial power." Daniel let out a low whistle, a sound laden with anticipation and a hint of concern. "This is a recipe for chaos." Robert offered a wry smile. Chaos reveals true character. The following morning dawned with its usual symphony of domestic sounds. 6-year-old Theo, a whirlwind of boundless energy, darted through the living room, a bath towel fashioned into a superhero cape billowing behind him. Ashley, radiating patience, attempted to coax him into eating his breakfast before embarking on his imaginary world-saving missions. "Theo, darling, your cereal is attempting a daring escape from the bowl," she said, her voice laced with amusement as the boy swooped a spoon through the air like a miniature fighter jet. Robert appeared in the doorway, observing the scene with a complex mixture of fondness and weariness. "How do you maintain such composure?" he asked, marveling at her unflappable nature. Ashley simply shrugged. "Working with children teaches you to waltz through the chaos." She was unpretentious, her reactions genuine, a stark contrast to the polished facade of the social circles Robert frequented. Hair hastily arranged, an easy smile playing on her lips, her eyes holding an unwavering honesty. Theo, never one to let a question go unanswered, pointed at his father. "Dad, Ashley sings like a happy duck." Ashley feigned shock. "A happy duck sings with feeling. Theo, it's called art." Robert chuckled, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, a sense of levity permeated the room. Perhaps he had been yearning for something that had been there all along. Maybe real people still exist. After breakfast, Robert requested Ashley's presence in his office. She entered hesitantly, self-consciously wiping her hands on her apron. "You wish to see me, sir?" "Yes," he replied, extending a sleek, black card towards her. "I'd like you to accept this." Ashley blinked, her surprise evident. "A credit card? Mr. Marshall." "It's a gift, Ashley. Use it as you see fit." "Mr. Marshall, there must be some mistake." "There isn't," he interjected firmly. "No limits. Simply use it." She hesitated, suspicion clouding her features. "Is this some kind of test?" Robert masked his discomfort. "Just a gift, Ashley." Meanwhile, behind the luminous glow of the computer screen, Daniel observed the exchange, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. The moment Ashley exited the room, he questioned, And what about Bianca? Will she receive the same gift? Yes. And I want you to meticulously track every single expense incurred by both of them. Daniel's fingers danced across the keyboard. This will be revealing. That afternoon, Bianca received her card. Her practice smile flashed instantly, perfectly calibrated for maximum impact. Finally, you're recognizing my true worth. She offered a knowing wink. Don't worry, darling. I'll put it to excellent use. Robert simply nodded, already anticipating the predictable trajectory of her spending spree. Hours crawled by, and the plan he had set in motion began to bear fruit. The monitoring system pinged incessantly on Daniel's computer. We have activity, Daniel announced, swirling the contents of his coffee mug. Bianca has begun her spending. What is she acquiring? Robert inquired, his voice carefully neutral. A private jet rental, bookings at 5-star hotels across the globe, and a veritable avalanche of designer clothing. Oh, and she's added this caption. Philanthropy trip. Robert snorted derisively. Luxury disguised as charity work. How original. Minutes later, another alert chimed on the screen. Now it's Ashley, Daniel announced, his tone tinged with disbelief. Wait a second. This isn't adding up. What is it? Robert asked, his curiosity piqued. She's purchasing balloons, toys, colored paint, candy, and juice boxes. Robert frowned, confused. Balloons? Why? Theo, eavesdropping near the doorway, piped up. I know. I think Ashley's throwing a party, but she didn't invite me. Daniel erupted in laughter. Either she has completely lost her mind, or she's orchestrating the most epic birthday celebration of all time. Robert crossed his arms, his intrigue deepening. Continue to monitor everything, Daniel. I need to understand the purpose behind all of this. That evening, he ventured downstairs, hoping to catch a glimpse of Ashley. She was nowhere to be found. Only Theo remained, engrossed in a notebook, sprawled on the floor. What are you working on, champ? Robert inquired, stepping closer. A treasure map, Theo exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Ashley said we have a secret plan for tomorrow. Robert knelt beside him. A secret plan, huh? Yep. Theo confirmed with a conspiratorial grin. It's going to be a happy day for people who don't usually get happy days. Robert remained silent for a moment, the weight of Theo's words settling heavily upon him. He returned to his office and revisited Ashley's purchase summary. Balloons, toys, paint, candy. No fancy brands, no luxury items. Just simple things. Daniel sauntered in, a teasing smirk gracing his lips. Care to admit that you're intrigued? Robert responded without looking up. I simply want to understand the reasoning behind her actions. That's all. But deep down, he knew that wasn't entirely true. He didn't just want to know what she was doing. He wanted to understand why. He wanted to understand her. Hours later, the system registered a new charge. Rental of a community hall in the downtown area. Robert straightened in his chair, his attention fully engaged. What is she planning, Daniel? It appears to be an event. An event for? That, my friend, is what we'll have to discover tomorrow. Robert leaned back, gazing at the glittering cityscape through the expansive window. At that moment, he sensed a profound shift within himself. For the first time in a long time, he felt a flicker of genuine excitement. Not driven by a business transaction, not fueled by a lucrative contract, but by a simple, inexplicable gesture. Unbeknownst to her, Ashley had sparked something within him. Without realizing it, Robert Marshall, the man who claimed not to believe in love, had unwittingly opened the door to the greatest challenge of his life. The challenge of two choices had begun. The following morning, Robert awoke earlier than usual, his sleep restless, his mind preoccupied with Ashley's enigmatic purchases. Balloons, paint, and candy danced through his thoughts. What could she possibly be planning? He ventured down to the kitchen, finding Theo already at the table, diligently working on a piece of toast slathered with jelly, leaving a sticky residue on his cheeks. Good morning, champ. Morning, Daddy. The boy mumbled through a mouthful of toast. Ashley chimed in. We have some important tasks to accomplish today. Robert poured himself a cup of coffee, his curiosity getting the better of him. What kind of tasks? Theo shrugged, licking his fingers clean. Secret grown-up stuff. But I'm going with her. I'm the official assistant. Theo puffed out his small chest, radiating pride. Assistants go on secret missions. Robert concealed a smile behind his mug. The boy was simply irresistible. A few minutes later, Ashley breezed into the kitchen. Her hair was secured in a slightly disheveled ponytail, and she was dressed in jeans and a simple t-shirt featuring a cat print. Good morning, Mr. Marshall, she greeted cheerfully. Theo, are you finished with your breakfast? We have a busy morning ahead. All done, Theo proclaimed, leaping from his chair. Are we going to save the world? Ashley laughed, her eyes twinkling with amusement. Something akin to that. Robert cleared his throat, unable to contain his curiosity any longer. Are you two heading out? Yes, just running a few errands downtown. She paused, her expression thoughtful. Do you need me to stay? No, go ahead. He attempted to sound casual, but his voice betrayed him. Just curious. What are you planning? Ashley blinked, surprised by the directness of his question. Oh, just some last-minute shopping. Nothing special. Theo crossed his arms, mimicking his father's stern demeanor. Dad, you sound like a spy. Robert nearly choked on his coffee. Me? Of course not. Ashley smiled warmly and reached for her purse. Come on, Theo. Let's allow your father to get back to his work. As soon as they departed, Robert bolted upstairs to his office. Daniel was already there, perched in front of the computer screen, an amused expression etched on his face. You're just in time for the show, Daniel announced, gesturing towards the monitor. Bianca just used the card. Robert stepped closer, his gaze fixed on the screen. Where? Airport. She chartered a private jet. Naturally. Daniel clicked on another tab. And take a look at the caption she posted. Sometimes, we must ascend to great heights to assist those struggling below. Philanthropy trip in progress. Robert rolled his eyes, his skepticism growing. First-class charity, I presume? Wait, there's more, Daniel interjected, zooming in on the image. She also indulged in a shopping spree at 3 high-end designer boutiques. Purses, shoes, dresses, all top-of-the-line brands. And she has scheduled a professional photo shoot to raise social awareness. Robert folded his arms, his jaw tightening. Awareness of what exactly? The impeccable quality of Italian leather? An excellent question. Thus far, all I've observed are photographs of her elegantly holding a champagne flute. Robert shook his head, though he wasn't entirely surprised. Bianca had always been predictable, glamour masking as compassion, image prioritized above all else. And Ashley, he prompted. Daniel typed rapidly. No new charges as of yet, but her phone tracker indicates that they are headed downtown. Robert gazed out the window, lost in thought. I need to know what she's planning. Daniel swiveled in his chair, his curiosity piqued. Do you genuinely believe that she will surprise you? I'm not sure, Robert admitted, hesitating slightly, but something tells me that she will. Meanwhile, Ashley and Theo strolled through the Central Market, a modest establishment popular among local families. Nothing extravagant, but brimming with life, Ashley remarked, her voice filled with warmth. Theo pushed the shopping cart with unrestrained enthusiasm, navigating the aisles with wide, erratic turns. Careful, Theo. You nearly toppled the banana display, Ashley cautioned, laughing. Sorry, this cart possesses superpowers. She shook her head, amused, as she reached for packs of brightly colored balloons from the shelves. Then, she ventured towards the toy section, selecting balls, simple dolls, plastic cars, and building block sets. Theo watched with wide, inquisitive eyes. Ashley, are you opening a toy store? No, sweetheart. This is all for a surprise. A surprise for whom? For children who deserve to smile. Theo frowned, his brow furrowed in confusion, but he refrained from asking further questions. Instead, he diligently loaded juice boxes into the cart, while Ashley selected an array of colorful paints, brushes, and bags of candy. As they waited in the checkout line, an elderly woman regarded their purchases with curiosity. "Is there a significant celebration impending?" she asked, her voice laced with kindness. Ashley returned her smile. "Something akin to that. A celebration for individuals who could use a little bit of joy." The woman nodded, visibly touched. "God bless your heart, dear." Out of nowhere, Theo inserted himself into the conversation. "I think my nanny is hosting a colossal party and forgot to extend an invitation to me." The woman chuckled, finding his proclamation endearing. Ashley blushed, slightly embarrassed. "Theo, you are invited. Don't worry. Yay." He raised his arms in jubilation, nearly knocking over a stack of gum. Ashley paid with the black card Robert had given her. The cashier glanced at the card, then at the modest collection of items, and frowned, her confusion evident, but she said nothing. As they exited the store, Theo stopped in front of Ashley, his expression serious. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, Theo. Why did you purchase all of this?" "My dad presented you with a magic card. You could have purchased a castle." Ashley knelt to his level, adjusting the backpack slung over her shoulder. "You know, Theo, not everything valuable is necessarily expensive. Sometimes the most meaningful thing we can do with money is transform it into smiles." Theo tilted his head, pondering her words. "Like magic?" "Precisely. Real magic." He grinned, satisfied with her answer. "You're the best nanny in the entire world." Ashley felt a warmth spread through her chest. That little boy had a remarkable knack for uttering words that effortlessly dismantled any emotional barriers she might have erected. As they walked back home, Robert remained glued to his computer screen. The system chronicled every transaction. "Shopping at the Central Market," Daniel announced, reading from the transaction list. "Balloons, paints, toys, candy, all basic items. Nothing extravagant." Robert frowned, perplexed. "She genuinely spent the money on that?" "Yep. And the total amounts to less than $1,000. "Less than $1,000? Robert repeated, stunned. "She possesses a card with unlimited spending potential, and she spent under $1,000? Daniel leaned back in his chair, visibly impressed. Meanwhile, Bianca has already blown through over $50,000. Robert fell silent, lost in thought. $50,000 on luxury versus $1,000 on smiles. The contrast was stark. "Something is off," he murmured. "What do you mean?" "No one does that, Daniel. No one is handed an unlimited credit card and then purchases balloons." Daniel shrugged, his expression ambiguous. "Perhaps she is simply different." Robert gazed at the screen once more, Theo's words echoing in his mind. Ashley said, "It's going to be a happy day for people who don't usually have happy days." He stood up, his decision made. "I want to see what she's planning in person." Daniel raised an eyebrow, his tone laced with skepticism. "You're going to follow her?" "I'm not going to follow. I'm going to observe." That is quite literally the definition of following. Robert disregarded his comment and snatched his car keys. "Notify me if anything new emerges." Daniel nodded, a knowing smile playing on his lips. "Good luck, Detective Marshall." Robert hurried down the stairs, his heart pounding faster than it should. He wasn't entirely certain what he expected to find. But one thing was certain. Ashley was about to reveal something to him that he never anticipated. And for the first time in years, Robert Marshall felt like he was on the precipice of learning a lesson that money could never buy. Robert parked his car 2 blocks away from the address Daniel provided, feeling utterly ridiculous. Here he was, a respected billionaire, crouching behind the steering wheel like some amateur spy in a badly written movie. His cell phone rang almost immediately. It was Daniel. "So, are you a professional spy now?" "Shut up," Robert retorted. But there was no genuine anger in his voice. Tracking indicates that they have stopped at an address in the Harrison neighborhood, Maple Street, number 342. Robert committed the address to memory. What is located at that address? Let me check. Daniel's fingers danced across the keyboard. Oh, it is a community daycare center. Happy Corner. Robert frowned, his confusion deepening. A daycare center? What is Ashley doing at a daycare center with all those supplies? Thanks, Daniel. Enjoy your secret mission, Agent Marshall. Robert disconnected the call and exited the vehicle, proceeding cautiously along the sidewalk. In the distance, he could hear the distinct sounds of children's voices, laughter, and upbeat music. As he rounded the corner, he spotted a small building painted a cheerful light yellow, with a front yard filled with an assortment of well-worn but lovingly maintained toys. A banner stretched across the entrance, proclaiming, "Welcome to Happy Corner." The door was slightly ajar. Robert approached slowly and peered through the glass. What he witnessed rendered him utterly speechless. The room had undergone a complete transformation. Colorful balloons adorned the ceiling, crepe paper streamers festooned the walls, and tables were laden with candy, simple cakes, and juice boxes. At least 20 children were running around, laughing, shouting, and painting posters on the floor. And right in the middle of this joyful chaos stood Ashley. Her apron was splattered with an array of vibrant hues, blue on the shoulder, yellow on the sleeve, green on her hands. Her hair was even more disheveled than usual, adorned with a crooked bow pinned haphazardly to the side. She laughed heartily as she attempted to mediate between two children squabbling over a paintbrush. "Easy, easy. There are enough brushes for everyone," she said, raising her hands like a referee. "No need to engage in artistic warfare." Theo appeared at her side, dressed in a makeshift red cape and a paper mask. "I am Super Theo, protector of justice and paintbrushes." The children erupted in laughter. Theo grabbed an extra paintbrush from a nearby box and presented it to the child who had been without one. "Mission complete," he announced, striking a superhero pose. Ashley ruffled his hair affectionately, her eyes shining with pride. "My favorite assistant." Robert remained rooted to the spot, unable to move. This scene was so unlike anything he had ever experienced. There were no cameras, no rehearsed smiles, no one vying for attention. It was simply joy, pure and unadulterated. One of the children, a little girl with braids, ran up to Ashley. "Auntie Ashley, look at what I painted." Ashley knelt down to examine the picture. "Wow, is that a family?" "Yes." The girl smiled proudly. "Me, my mom, and my brother. And that's the dog I want to have someday." Ashley enveloped her in a warm hug. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. I'm going to hang it on the wall of honor." The girl scampered off, radiating happiness. Out of nowhere, Theo spotted his father standing in the doorway. His eyes widened in surprise. "Daddy!" All the children ceased their activities and turned to gaze at the entrance. Ashley turned as well, her cheeks flushing with a rosy hue. "Mr. Marshall, what are you doing here?" Robert, unsure of what to say, stepped inside slowly. "I was just passing by and—" "Liar!" Theo interrupted, giggling. "You were spying on us." The other children joined in the laughter. Robert felt his face grow warm. "I was not spying. I simply wanted to see what you all were doing." Ashley folded her arms, attempting to maintain a serious expression, but a smile betrayed her efforts. "And did you manage to ascertain the nature of our activities?" She gestured around the room, encompassing the children, the simple decorations, and the colorful chaos. "This is Happy Corner. I have been volunteering here since long before I started working as Theo's nanny. These children, many of whom do not possess much, so I wanted to provide them with a special day." Robert felt a tightness in his chest. "And you used the card for this?" "Yes," she admitted hesitantly. "I hope you don't mind. I know it was a gift, but—" "No," he interjected, his voice softer than before. "I don't mind at all." Theo tugged on his father's hand, his voice urgent. "Daddy, you have to help. The party requires more grown-ups." Before Robert could respond, Ashley offered a playful smile. "Mr. Marshall doesn't strike me as someone who is adept at playing with children." Robert raised an eyebrow, a spark of challenge in his eyes. Are you questioning my ability to have fun? Perhaps, she replied, handing him a paintbrush. Let's see if a billionaire can paint as well as a 5-year-old. He accepted the brush, his determination growing. Where do I paint? Over there. Ashley pointed to a white banner stretched out on the floor. Each child is leaving their mark. You may add yours as well. Robert knelt beside the children, feeling decidedly out of place, yet strangely at ease. He began painting something simple, perhaps a house. Theo showed up next to him, observing his efforts intently. Daddy, your house is crooked. I'm attempting to create abstract art, Robert countered. Abstract what? Never mind. The children giggled. One of them, a boy with curly hair, nudged Robert. Are you really rich? Robert blinked, taken aback by the bluntness of the question. Yes, I am. Then why are you sitting on the floor painting with us? The question caught him off guard. Because you invited me. The boy seemed satisfied with his response and returned to his painting. Ashley watched the scene from a distance, her arms crossed, a soft smile gracing her lips. There was something endearing about seeing that serious, composed man, now crouched on the floor, covered in paint, attempting to paint a crooked house. Suddenly, one of the children tripped while running and bumped into a bucket overflowing with confetti. The bucket went flying through the air, showering Robert with its colorful contents. Silence descended upon the room. Theo was the first to react, erupting in laughter. Daddy turned into a human confetti cannon. The other children joined in, their laughter echoing through the room. Robert remained still, covered from head to toe in colorful paper, blinking slowly. Ashley covered her mouth, desperately trying to suppress her laughter, but it was no use. I'm so sorry, Mr. Marshall, but she couldn't finish the sentence, overcome with mirth. Seeing the ridiculous state he was in, Robert broke into a genuine laugh. All right, he raised his hands in surrender. I deserved that. Theo ran over and hugged his father's legs, still convulsing with laughter. You're the best clown at the party, Daddy. Clown, huh? Robert playfully tousled his son's hair. I'm coming for you. Theo bolted off, shouting with glee, and the other children followed suit, turning the room into a whirlwind of happiness. Ashley approached Robert and offered him a cloth to wipe his face. Thank you for coming, she said, her voice sincere. He accepted the cloth, meeting her gaze with equal sincerity. Thank you for allowing me to stay. They stood there, surrounded by laughter and color, and for the first time in a long while, Robert felt like he was precisely where he was supposed to be. In that moment, enveloped in simplicity and genuine joy, he grasped something profound. It had never been about the money. It was about what you chose to do with it, and Ashley had chosen smiles. The party continued for another 2 hours. When it finally concluded, the room resembled a colorful battlefield. Paint on the walls, confetti on the floor, deflated balloons scattered in the corners. But the smiles on the children's faces made every bit of the mess worthwhile. Robert helped with the cleanup, a task he never envisioned himself undertaking. He swept up confetti, collected discarded paper cups, and even attempted, with limited success, to scrub paint off the wall. Mr. Marshall, you truly don't need to do that, Ashley said, holding a trash bag open. I helped create the mess. It's only fair that I assist in cleaning it up. Theo appeared with a broom twice his size. I'll help too. Super Theo never abandons a mission. Ashley chuckled and ruffled the boy's hair. Thank you, superhero. Once everything was somewhat under control, Robert checked his watch. It was already past 5 p.m. Have you two had dinner yet? Ashley blinked, surprised. Not yet. How about we grab a coffee? He paused, considering his words. Or dinner, whatever you prefer. Ashley was speechless for a moment. Was that an invitation? Before she could respond, Theo raised his hand as if he were in school. I want to go. Can I go, Dad? Please? Robert chuckled. Of course, buddy. You're invited. Yay. Theo jumped up and down, barely able to contain his excitement. Can we go to that place with the giant milkshakes? Sure. Ashley was still trying to process what was happening. Robert Marshall, the serious, reserved billionaire, was inviting her and Theo to dinner. Felt surreal. Okay, then, she said, still a bit shy. But I need to stop by home first. I'm covered in paint. Robert glanced down at himself, noticing that he was still wearing confetti on his shirt. Me too. Theo giggled. You both look like you wrestled a rainbow. 40 minutes later, they were seated in a cozy little diner downtown. Nothing fancy, just a simple place with wooden tables, plastic-covered menus, and the comforting aroma of burgers grilling in the air. Theo sat next to Ashley, already stacking sugar packets like building blocks. Robert watched with amusement. He never sits still, does he? A quiet child is usually plotting something, Ashley joked, her eyes twinkling. That's true, Robert smiled. And he's a master of mischief. Without looking up from his sugar tower, Theo interjected. I heard that, and I don't engage in mischief. I conduct scientific experiments. Ashley burst out laughing. Scientific experiments? Like the time you put soap in the garden fountain? Theo offered an innocent look. I wanted to determine if it would actually produce bubbles. Oh, it did? Robert added, rolling his eyes playfully. Bubbles everywhere. Daniel spent the entire afternoon cleaning it up. Ashley laughed so hard she had to wipe away tears. I remember that. Daniel said it looked like a snowstorm, but with a lavender scent. They all laughed together, and the atmosphere at the table became light and easy. It felt as though they had known each other for years, not just a few hours. The waitress arrived with their food, simple burgers, fries, and one giant strawberry milkshake for Theo, who cheered as if he had just won a grand prize. It's really huge, he exclaimed, causing nearby tables to turn and smile. Ashley gently reminded him, Theo, indoor voice, remember? Sorry, he said in a quieter tone, but the smile remained plastered on his face. As they ate, Robert noticed Ashley playing with her fries, appearing somewhat distracted. Are you all right? She looked up, surprised by his concern. Yes, of course. Just thinking about? Ashley hesitated, then took a deep breath and opted for honesty. About Happy Corner, about those children. I grew up in places like that. Robert paused, his fork suspended halfway to his mouth. He brought the milkshake closer to his mouth. What do you mean, group homes? He asked. She responded with a soft, sad smile, her eyes reflecting a hidden past. I spent most of my childhood in them. Never really had a real family. That's why I love working with kids so much. I want to give them what I never had, a sense of belonging, a feeling of being cherished. Theo, momentarily pausing his enthusiastic slurping of the milkshake, looked at her with wide, serious eyes. You didn't have a mom or a dad? No, sweetie, Ashley replied, her voice gentle. But I had some really kind people who took care of me. They might not have been family, but they filled that void as best they could. Like how we take care of you now? Theo asked innocently, tilting his head. Ashley's eyes suddenly glistened with tears that threatened to spill over. Yeah, something like that. A little bit like that. The simple comparison struck a chord deep within her. Robert watched this exchange in silence, his chest tightening with emotion. He'd always sensed that Ashley was special, a truly good person, but he had no idea just how much strength and unwavering kindness was hidden inside that seemingly simple, beautiful woman. That's why you use the card that way, he said, more to himself than to her, finally understanding the depth of her actions. Ashley nodded, her gaze softening. I know it might seem silly. Balloons, candy, paint, simple stuff, but to me those things mean childhood, and every child deserves to experience that magic. Robert remained quiet for a long moment, absorbing the weight of her words. Then, he said with genuine sincerity, It's not silly, Ashley. It's the most thoughtful thing I've seen anyone do in a long time. Says a lot about who you are. Ashley smiled, clearly touched by his praise. Out of nowhere, Theo dropped his straw with a clatter and pointed an accusing finger at his dad. "Dad, your face is red." Robert blinked, momentarily confused. "What? My face?" He reached up to touch his cheek. "It's red, like a tomato." Theo laughed, finding the whole situation highly amusing. "I think you like Ashley." Ashley almost choked on a French fry, sputtering and coughing. Robert opened his mouth, completely unsure of what to say. "Theo, I don't lie, Dad," the boy stated matter-of-factly. "I saw it. You look at her with that goofy face, like you do when you watch superhero movies." People at nearby tables started chuckling quietly, amused by the child's innocent observations. Robert felt his ears heating up, the blush creeping further up his face. "Theo, please," he pleaded quietly. Ashley tried to help, but she was laughing so much she could barely speak. "Theo, let your dad be," she managed to gasp between giggles. "But it's true." Theo crossed his arms stubbornly. "Totally serious. He looks like that every time you sing those weird songs in the morning." "Weird songs?" Ashley pretended to be shocked, feigning offense. "I sing classics, opera classics, off-key classics," Theo added, laughing even harder. "Hey, show some respect for the arts," Ashley retorted playfully. Robert, still blushing furiously, shook his head, but couldn't help smiling. That boy had a special gift for finding and amplifying awkward moments. A true talent. But strangely, he didn't mind it so much. For the first time in years, he felt truly human. Not the billionaire CEO, not the untouchable businessman. Just Robert, a man laughing with his son, and a woman who made him see the world in a completely new and vibrant way. When they finally finished eating, Theo started getting noticeably sleepy, resting his head heavily on Ashley's shoulder. "Looks like someone's tired," she said gently, running her hand soothingly through his hair. "It's been a full day," Robert agreed, signaling the waiter and calling for the check. They all left the diner together, Theo happily holding both of their hands, sleepy but content. The night air was cool and refreshing against their skin, and the city lights shimmered and danced along the wet streets after a brief rain shower. Robert looked at Ashley, who was softly humming an off-key melody, as she gently helped Theo drift off to sleep. And in that moment, something shifted deep inside him. It wasn't just fleeting curiosity, or even simple admiration. It was something deeper, something undeniably real and powerful. He didn't know what to call it yet, but he knew one thing for sure. He didn't want that moment to end. A few days had passed since that eye-opening night at the diner. Robert felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders, and he found himself smiling more often. Daniel even jokingly remarked that he was almost human again. But despite this newfound lightness, there was something pressing that he needed to do, something that had been weighing heavily on his mind since the beginning, telling the truth about the test. The next morning he called Daniel into his office, his tone serious. "I need you to set up a meeting," Robert said, "with both Bianca and Ashley, this afternoon." Daniel raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Both of them together? At the same time?" "Yes, it's time to clear the air." "This should be interesting," Daniel muttered, crossing his arms. "Can I ask why? I'm sensing this could be explosive." Robert sighed, running a hand wearily through his hair. "I'm going to tell them the truth about the cards. Everything." Daniel made a face, his expression concerned. "Are you sure about that, Robert? Ashley's not going to like knowing she was tested. Not one bit." "I know," Robert replied, his voice firm. "But she deserves the truth. Both of them do." Daniel simply nodded, his concern evident. He knew his friend well enough to sense when he was about to do something incredibly risky, something that could potentially backfire spectacularly. At precisely 3 p.m., Bianca arrived first, as punctual and impeccably dressed as always. She walked into the office as if it were a runway, sporting an expensive designer dress, sky-high heels, and large, glamorous sunglasses, which she removed dramatically as she took a seat. "Robert, darling, what a surprise to be summoned here," she said, crossing her perfectly toned legs and flashing a practiced smile. I hope this is to thank me for using that generous gift so creatively. Robert didn't respond, his expression unreadable. He simply waited. Minutes later, Ashley walked in, looking decidedly uncomfortable. She wore jeans and a simple blouse, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. When she saw Bianca already seated, she hesitated slightly. "Mr. Marshall, you asked to see me?" "Yes, Ashley. Please have a seat." He gestured to the empty chair, as he noticed that she sat far away from Bianca, who looked her up and down with thinly veiled disdain. Robert stood, his hands in his pockets, visibly uneasy. "I called you both here because I need to be honest about something. Something important." Bianca tilted her head, her curiosity piqued. Ashley just waited quietly, her eyes fixed on Robert. "The cards I gave you," he began, pausing to gather his thoughts. "They weren't just gifts." "Not entirely." Bianca frowned, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows furrowing in confusion. "What do you mean?" "They were part of an experiment," Robert confessed, his voice heavy. "I wanted to see who truly cared about me, and not just about what I have, my money and power." The silence that followed was thick and heavy, charged with unspoken emotions. Bianca was the first to react, letting out a dry, incredulous laugh. "An experiment? Seriously, Robert? You gave me a black card, an unlimited spending account, to test me?" "Yes." She stood up abruptly, visibly offended. "And what exactly were you expecting me to do? Donate it all to charity? Live like a pauper? I was hoping you'd use it in a way that showed me who you really are. Your true character," Robert explained, his voice calm and measured. "I did show you, Robert," Bianca said, throwing her hands up in exasperation, clearly upset. "I'm someone who enjoys life, who likes nice things, who appreciates the finer things in life. What's wrong with that? It's not my fault that I have great taste." "Nothing," Robert replied calmly, keeping his gaze steady. "But you also showed me that you care more about appearances than anything else, that you're more interested in the superficial than the substance." Bianca's face turned red with anger, but she didn't respond. Deep down, she knew he was right. Ashley, who had been quiet until then, finally spoke. Her voice was low, but steady and filled with a quiet strength. "And me? What did I show you?" Robert looked at her, his gaze softening, and for the first time he hesitated. "You showed me kindness, generosity, a genuine heart. You showed me a level of compassion that I haven't seen in a very long time." Ashley slowly stood up, her eyes filled with a mixture of hurt and disappointment, but also understanding. "So all of this was a lie? The gift, the trust, everything?" "Ashley, no," Robert protested, reaching out to her. She raised her hand to stop him, her voice trembling slightly. "If you feel the need to test people, Mr. Marshall, it means you never truly trusted them in the first place. And that's what hurts the most." Her words hit Robert like a physical blow, a punch to the gut. Bianca, sensing the shift in power, crossed her arms and smirked. "Well, at least the two of us agree on something for once. You were being ridiculous, over the top even." But Ashley wasn't interested in agreeing with Bianca. She only wanted to leave. "I'm going," she said, picking up her purse and turning towards the door. "Ashley, wait," Robert pleaded, taking a step towards her. She stopped at the door without turning around, her voice barely above a whisper. "You hired me to care for Theo, and that's what I'll keep doing. But don't ask me to trust you again, Mr. Marshall, because I don't know if I can." She walked out and closed the door gently behind her. Bianca huffed dismissively and grabbed her designer bag. "Well, that was the most pathetic meeting I've ever been to. Goodbye, Robert. Good luck fixing this mess. You're going to need it." She swept out of the office, leaving Robert alone in the room. Daniel appeared in the doorway, taking in the aftermath of the explosion. "I warned you," he said quietly. Robert sank down into his chair, rubbing his face wearily with both hands. "I ruined everything." "Yeah, you did," Daniel agreed, his voice sympathetic. That evening, Robert came home early, his mood somber. He went straight to Theo's room, where the boy was lying on the bed, flipping through a superhero comic book. "Hi, Daddy," Theo greeted him, his voice cheerful. "Hi, champ," Robert replied, sitting down heavily at the edge of the bed. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" Theo closed the comic book, his curiosity piqued. "Sure. You look kind of sad. What's wrong?" "I am," Robert admitted, letting out a deep breath. "I made a mistake today. A big one." "What kind of mistake?" Theo asked, his brow furrowing in concern. "Did you spill your coffee on your new suit?" "Worse," Robert said. I hurt Ashley." Theo's face grew instantly serious, his light-heartedness vanishing. "Why? What did you do, Dad?" Robert searched for the right words, struggling to explain the complexities of his actions in a way that a 6-year-old could understand. "I gave her a gift to see what she'd do with it, to test her." Theo stared at him, his expression confused. "Test her? Like a school test?" "Sort of," Robert said, wincing inwardly at the inadequacy of his explanation. "Daddy," Theo said, crossing his arms and trying to look as grown-up as possible. "That's not nice." "I know," Robert admitted, his voice filled with regret. "I know it wasn't. It was a foolish thing to do, truly." "Ashley's nice," Theo insisted. "She takes care of me, sings funny songs, plays games." "You were mean to her." Those simple words stung more than Robert expected. Seeing that disappointed look on his son's face was crushing. "You're right, Theo," he said, his voice filled with genuine remorse. "I was mean." "Then you need to say sorry," Theo stated firmly. "I tried," Robert explained, his voice tinged with frustration. "She didn't want to listen." Theo thought for a moment, tapping his chin thoughtfully with his finger. Then he said, "You know what Ashley told me once? That saying sorry isn't just words. You have to show you really mean it." Robert looked at his son, deeply moved by the boy's wisdom. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart," Theo replied, giving him a mischievous little grin. "You just didn't notice it until now." Robert pulled him into a tight hug, holding him close. "Thank you, champ," he whispered. "You're welcome," Theo said, patting his dad awkwardly on the back. Theo pulled back and looked at his dad seriously. "But if Ashley leaves because of you, I'm going to be really mad. I'll do everything I can to make sure that doesn't happen." Theo nodded, satisfied with his warning, and went back to his comic book. Robert walked downstairs and found Ashley in the kitchen, quietly preparing Theo's lunch for the next day. She didn't even look at him when he walked in. "Ashley," Robert began tentatively. "Mr. Marshall," she said, her voice cold and distant. "Please, I'm busy." He stepped closer slowly, his heart heavy. "I know you're upset, and you have every right to be. I understand that." She stopped slicing bread, but kept her back turned, refusing to meet his gaze. "Upset? No, Mr. Marshall," she said, her voice flat. "I'm disappointed, and that's even worse." "Yes, it is," Robert agreed, his voice low with regret. Robert took a deep breath, bracing himself. "I was a fool, Ashley, a complete and utter fool. I know that, and I know saying sorry won't magically fix what I did. It may even be impossible to fix." Ashley finally turned around, her eyes still looking hurt and wary. "Then why are you here, Mr. Marshall?" "Because I need you to know," he said, pausing to choose his words carefully. "You reminded me of something I'd forgotten, Ashley, that there are good people in the world, genuine people, people who do the right thing not because they're being tested or watched, but because that's just who they are, because it's the human thing to do." Ashley didn't say anything, her arms still crossed protectively across her chest. "And I ruined that," Robert continued, his voice filled with self-reproach. "Out of fear, out of mistrust, because I was a coward, Ashley. I was afraid of getting hurt, so I hurt you instead." She slowly uncrossed her arms, her expression softening just a fraction. "Mr. Marshall, please call me Robert." She hesitated, then sighed. "Robert, I understand that you've been hurt before, and that you're carrying a lot of weight, but testing people isn't the answer. Trusting them is, even if it's scary. That's the only way to truly connect." "I know," he said, stepping a little closer. And I want to try to trust for real this time. To trust you. To trust people again. Ashley looked at him for a long moment, her gaze intense, and Robert felt like she was seeing straight through him, seeing all his flaws and insecurities, but also seeing the genuine remorse in his heart. Finally, she gave a tired nod, a small glimmer of hope in her eyes. All right, Robert, I accept your apology, but it's going to take time for me to trust you again. A lot of time. I understand that, Ashley, and I'll wait as long as it takes. I promise you that. She gave a small smile, still tinged with sadness. Good night, Robert. Good night, Ashley, he replied softly. She left the kitchen, leaving Robert alone with his thoughts. He leaned against the counter, exhausted but also filled with a renewed sense of purpose. He had lost her trust, but at least he still had a chance to win it back. And this time he wasn't going to waste it. The next morning, Theo woke up with a mission burning in his heart. He sat up straight in bed, crossed his arms, and declared out loud to himself, if adults don't know how to fix things, then Super Theo will have to act. He has to fix everything. He leaped out of bed, ready to save the day. He ran downstairs to the kitchen, where he found Daniel making coffee. Daniel, I need to talk to you. It's urgent. Daniel turned around, holding his mug, surprised by the boy's sudden urgency. Good morning to you too, Theo. What happened? Did the house catch on fire? Theo looked around dramatically, making sure no one else was there to overhear their top-secret conversation, and whispered, My dad and Ashley are mad at each other. I know, Daniel replied, unfazed. Everybody knows, Theo. It's been the talk of the town, literally. So we have to do something, Theo exclaimed, his voice filled with determination. Daniel raised an eyebrow, amused by the boy's seriousness. We who? Are you recruiting me for a secret mission? Me and you. Theo jumped onto a nearby chair, his eyes gleaming with mischief. Let's make a secret plan to get them back together. A super secret plan. Daniel laughed, thoroughly amused by the boy's unwavering determination. Theo, those are grown-up stuff. They'll fix it themselves. Eventually. No, they won't, Theo said, crossing his arms stubbornly. Adults are too proud, too busy. They need help. They always do. Daniel thought for a moment, looking at the 6-year-old boy with that hopeful little face. He couldn't resist. All right, Super Theo. What do you have in mind? What's the master plan? Theo smiled victoriously, his eyes sparkling with excitement. First, we need Ashley to come here more often. She only stays with me. She already works here every day, Theo, Daniel pointed out. Yes, but she only stays with me, playing and singing. She needs to stay close to Dad, too. They need to be in the same room. Theo tapped the table like a seasoned military strategist plotting a critical operation. So, I'm going to pretend I'm sick, really sick. Then Dad will worry, and Ashley will have to take care of me, and they'll be forced to talk to each other. It's brilliant. Daniel shook his head, thoroughly impressed by the boy's devious genius. You're wicked for a child, Theo. A miniature Machiavelli. Thank you. Theo smiled proudly, basking in the praise. Hours later, the elaborate plan went into action, carefully orchestrated by Super Theo himself. Theo was lying dramatically on the living room couch with a thick blanket artfully draped over his legs, pretending to be weak and feverish. He even put a damp, lukewarm towel on his forehead for extra realism, trying his best to look like a character in a medical drama. Robert came home from the office, exhausted from a long day of meetings, and found his son in that state, his worry immediately skyrocketing. Theo, what happened, buddy? Are you okay? Theo spoke with a weak, dramatic voice, his eyes half closed. Dad, I'm not feeling well. Not at all. Robert knelt beside him, his brow furrowed with concern. Not well? How? What are you feeling? Headache? Dizziness? Did you eat something bad? Theo closed his eyes theatrically, exaggerating his symptoms. Yes, headache, dizziness, and my stomach is making strange noises, like a monster is living inside. Robert placed his hand gently on his son's forehead, his worry increasing. You don't have a fever. But I'm sick, Dad. I'm definitely sick. Theo insisted weakly. I think I need Ashley. Only she knows how to make that special tea that makes me feel better. The one with honey and lemon. Robert hesitated, his mind racing. He knew Ashley was still upset with him, and he didn't want to force her into an awkward situation. But if Theo really needed her. All right, buddy. I'll call her. Just rest, okay? Theo gave a tiny, almost imperceptible secret smile as soon as his father left the room, his plan unfolding perfectly. A few minutes later, Ashley came rushing in, carrying a bag filled with medicine, a thermometer, and a worried expression on her face. Theo, I heard you're not feeling well. What happened? Where does it hurt? She rushed to his side, kneeling next to the couch and gently touching his forehead. Let me check your temperature. Theo kept up the act, exaggerating his weakness. Ashley, only you can cure me. Only your magic tea can save me from this terrible sickness. She smiled, amused by his over-the-top performance. I'll make that chamomile tea you like with extra honey. Just stay right here, okay? Don't move. Robert watched from a distance, his arms crossed, a suspicious expression on his face. There was something strange about all of this, something that didn't quite add up. Theo looked way too lively to be truly sick, almost like he was putting on a show. When Ashley came back with the warm, fragrant tea, Theo drank it all at once, gulping it down like a potent elixir. Miraculously, he started getting dramatically better within seconds. Wow, it worked, Ashley. You're amazing. Thanks. I feel like a new man. Ashley laughed, shaking her head. I'm glad you feel better, sweetheart. But maybe next time, tell me you just wanted tea. Then Theo looked at his dad and Ashley as if he had just had a brilliant idea, his eyes sparkling with innocent mischief. Since I'm better now, you two can stay here talking. I'm gonna play in my room. I have a lot of superhero action figures that need my attention. And he jumped off the couch and ran off, leaving the two of them alone, the door swinging shut behind him. Ashley and Robert looked at each other awkwardly, a mixture of amusement and embarrassment on their faces. I think we were set up, Robert said, a wry smile playing on his lips. Ashley sighed, but couldn't hold back a smile. He's too smart for his own good. He learns fast. The little schemer. For sure, Robert agreed. He definitely has a knack for manipulation. The room went quiet for a moment, an uncomfortable silence hanging in the air, until Ashley stood up. Well, if he's fine, I'll be going. I have things to do, and I'm sure you're busy. Robert took a step forward, his heart pounding in his chest. Can we talk, Ashley? Just for a minute, please? She hesitated, her eyes searching his, and finally nodded reluctantly. All right, but just for a minute, Robert. Robert took a deep breath, gathering his courage. I know we're still in a strange place after what happened, and that I screwed things up royally, but I want you to know that I'm trying to be different, trying to be better. To not be the jerk I was before. Ashley looked at him, her expression softening slightly. I know, Robert, and I appreciate that. More than you know. Thank you for giving me that chance. For even trying. She smiled lightly, a genuine smile that reached her eyes, making Robert's heart soar. Theo wouldn't let me do anything else, she added with a chuckle. He's determined to get his way. He's even more stubborn than you are. They both laughed, and for the first time since the argument, the air between them felt lighter, less strained. In the following days, Theo intensified his master plan, enlisting Daniel as his willing accomplice. With Daniel's help, he started writing fake notes in his messy, childlike handwriting and strategically leaving them around the house for maximum impact. One of the notes, carefully placed on Robert's pillow, said, Dad says he misses Ashley. It was signed, Dad. Another, taped to the refrigerator door, said, Ashley is the best nanny in the world. Dad agrees. This one was signed, also Dad. Robert found one of the notes on the breakfast table one morning and immediately called Daniel. You're helping Theo with this, aren't you? You're in on this ridiculous scheme. Daniel pretended to be completely innocent, feigning ignorance. Helping with what, Robert? I have no idea what you're talking about. Robert held up the paper, his voice laced with amusement. Dad agrees. Really? Daniel? Daniel burst out laughing, unable to maintain the charade any longer. Hey! The kid has a real gift for persuasion. I'm just supporting the cause, Robert. Helping him achieve his goals. Teamwork. Robert shook his head, though deep down, he found it all incredibly amusing. Theo was doing everything in his power to fix a mistake that he himself had made, and that was something truly special. Theo's final, and perhaps most brilliant, move came a few days later. He found an old photo of Robert and Ashley smiling together, taken the day of the party at the daycare, when they were both covered in paint and glitter. He carefully put it in a simple frame and placed the photo right in the middle of the living room shelf, where no one could possibly miss it. It was a prime location. When Ashley walked into the room that afternoon, she stopped dead in her tracks when she saw the picture, her eyes widening in surprise. Theo, what is this? Theo appeared behind her, his expression all innocence. Oh, that picture. I thought it was so nice. You both look really happy in it. So I decided to frame it and put it there. You both are really smiling, he added, his voice filled with pride. Ashley picked up the frame, her fingers tracing the outline of the image. It was true. In that photo, both she and Robert looked genuinely happy, carefree, and completely relaxed. Theo, you can't just go around putting framed pictures up in the house without asking. This is Robert's house. But did you like it, Ashley? He asked, his voice filled with hope. He gave her the best puppy dog eyes he could muster. Ashley sighed, but smiled. Yes, Theo, I liked it. It's a nice picture. Then let it stay, please? Just for a little while? She looked at the photo once more, her heart softening, and finally placed it back on the shelf. All right, Theo, can stay, but just for a little while. Theo celebrated silently, pumping his fist in the air when she wasn't looking. His plan was working, better than he could have ever hoped. That night, Robert came downstairs to get a glass of water and noticed the photo on the shelf, illuminated by the soft glow of the lamplight. He stopped, staring at it for a long moment, his mind filled with memories of that day, of the laughter and the joy. Theo appeared on the stairs in his pajamas, rubbing his sleepy eyes, watching his father. Did you see the picture I put up, Dad? Robert turned around, smiling. I did, Theo. It looks really nice. Did you frame it yourself? Robert asked. Theo came down the steps and stood beside his dad, his little hand reaching out to touch the glass. Did you like it, Dad? I did, Theo, Robert replied, running a hand through his son's tousled hair. It's a great picture. Captures a good memory. But I know what you're doing, Robert added, his voice gentle. Theo's eyes widened, his face flushing with embarrassment. You do? I do, Robert confirmed. The fake notes, pretending to be sick, the picture. You're trying to help me, aren't you? Theo lowered his head, his shoulders slumping with disappointment. Sorry, Dad. I just wanted you and Ashley to be friends again. Best friends. Like in a movie. Robert knelt down to his level, looking him in the eye. Theo, I'm not mad. Actually, I'm impressed. You're trying to fix something I messed up, and that takes a lot of courage. You're a good kid, Theo. So, you're not mad at me? Theo asked, his eyes searching his father's face. No, champ. I'm not mad at you. I'm grateful. But promise me you won't pretend to be sick again, okay? You really scared me. Theo laughed, relieved. I promise, Dad. No more pretending to be sick. Robert hugged his son tightly, his heart overflowing with love and gratitude. Thank you for caring so much, Theo. Always, Dad, Theo replied, hugging him back with all his might. When Theo went back upstairs to sleep, Robert stayed in the living room, looking at the photo once more. That boy was right. He and Ashley needed to be friends again, or maybe something more. And for the first time, Robert let himself think about that possibility, not with fear or apprehension, but with a sense of hope and excitement. No tests, no hidden agendas, just honesty and truth. The next morning, Robert woke up with a clear idea in mind, a sense of purpose driving him. He went down to the office and called Daniel, his voice firm and decisive. "I need you to organize an event," he said, getting straight to the point. Daniel, still sipping his first coffee, blinked in surprise, struggling to fully wake up. "Good morning to you too, Robert. What kind of event are we talking about? A lavish gala? A charity auction? Something top secret?" "A fundraiser for the Happy Corner," Robert replied, his voice leaving no room for argument. Daniel almost dropped his mug, sputtering coffee across his desk. "Ashley's daycare? You're serious?" "Completely serious," Robert confirmed, looking out the window at the bustling city below. "That place needs help, and I want to do something real, something meaningful to help them. Not as a test, not for show, not to impress anyone, just because it's the right thing to do." Daniel smiled, his eyes shining with genuine admiration. "Now you're speaking my language, Robert. Now you're thinking like a decent human being. So what should we do? When do you want to do it?" Robert asked. "As soon as possible," Robert replied firmly. 2 weeks? Can we make that happen?" "I'll start planning now," Daniel said, already reaching for his computer. "Talk to you later." Robert then called Ashley in for a conversation, his heart pounding with anticipation. She walked into the office, still a bit reserved and wary, her guard up. "You wanted to talk to me, Robert?" "Yes, Ashley. Please have a seat," Robert replied, pointing to the chair across from his desk. "I have a proposal for you, something I hope you'll agree with." Ashley sat down, her curiosity piqued. "What kind of proposal? Another test?" "No, Ashley. Nothing like that," Robert said, shaking his head. "I want to organize a fundraiser for the Happy Corner. Raise money, get donations, bring attention to the incredible work you all do there." Ashley's eyes widened in surprise, her skepticism slowly fading away. "Really, Robert? You're completely serious?" Robert leaned forward, his gaze intense. "Completely serious, Ashley. But I'll only do it if you help me. You know the place, the people, the needs. You know what that place really needs. I need your guidance, your experience." Ashley was quiet for a moment, taking it all in, her mind racing. Then a slow smile appeared on her face, a genuine and radiant smile that lit up the entire room. "You really are serious. You really want to do this?" "I do," Robert said, his voice filled with sincerity. She stood up, deeply moved, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Then I accept, Robert. Let's make it happen. Let's do something amazing for those kids." Robert smiled, relieved and overjoyed. "Great. Let's start today. Right now." Of course, Theo was not going to miss out on all the excitement. When he heard about the event, he burst into the room, carrying a little notebook and a pen, his face beaming with anticipation. "I want to help too. I want to be part of the action." Robert raised an eyebrow, amused. "Help? How, Theo? What can you possibly do to help plan a fundraiser?" "I'm not sure yet, but every event needs an assistant, and I'm the best assistant in the whole world. I'm organized, I'm efficient, and I'm really good at getting people to do what I want." Theo puffed out his chest with pride. Ashley laughed, shaking her head. "All right, Super Theo, you can be our official assistant. But you have to promise to follow our instructions and not cause any chaos." "Yay!" Theo shouted, pumping his fist in the air. "I promise to be the best little assistant. Let's get this show on the road." Over the next few days, the house turned into a bustling headquarters, a whirlwind of activity and planning. Ashley and Robert worked side by side, meticulously planning every detail of the fundraiser, their connection growing stronger with each passing day. Daniel managed the vendors, decorators, and the ever-expanding guest list, his organizational skills shining. And Theo? Well, Theo helped in his own unique and often chaotic way. On decoration day, he insisted on helping hang the colorful balloons, his enthusiasm boundless. He climbed a ladder, his small body teetering precariously, and while trying to tie one particularly stubborn balloon, he accidentally let go of a dozen others, which floated straight up to the ceiling, getting stuck in the rafters. "Oops," Theo said, his voice small and contrite, Ashley looked up at the balloons now hopelessly out of reach. Theo, what did you do? I didn't mean to, Ashley. They just got away. He explained, his eyes wide with innocence. Robert shook his head, but he was smiling. We're going to need a taller ladder. And maybe a balloon wrangler. He may need training in balloon control. Another mishap happened while they were testing the sound system. Theo, curious as always, fiddled with the wires and knobs, trying to figure out how everything worked, and accidentally knocked over a sensitive microphone, which let out a loud, high-pitched screech through the whole hall, making everyone jump and cover their ears. Ashley rushed over, her expression a mixture of concern and exasperation. Theo, don't touch things without asking. You could have broken something. Sorry, Ashley. I just wanted to see how it worked. He explained, his voice sincere. Daniel turned the sound system off, laughing. This kid's a force of nature, a miniature tornado. He's full of energy. But the funniest and most chaotic moment came the day before the event. Theo was helping paint some glittery banners, adding a touch of sparkle and glamour to the decorations. Robert was nearby, carefully reviewing the speech he would give at the ceremony, trying to memorize his lines. Dad, look what I made, Theo exclaimed, raising a handful of glistening gold glitter in the air. Robert turned toward him, smiling. Very nice, buddy. Now go wash your hands before you get glitter everywhere. Too late. The suit Ashley had so meticulously chosen for Theo seemed to propel him around the room like a tiny, well-dressed whirlwind, as he greeted each guest with an importance that belied his age. Welcome. I'm the official assistant, he declared with utmost seriousness to everyone who crossed the threshold. Ashley, meanwhile, radiated an understated elegance in a simple, light green dress, her hair cascading down her back. She orchestrated the event with a calm that seemed almost supernatural, a serene eye in the center of a charming storm, because inevitably something always went awry. This time it was the doves, the pristine white symbols of peace intended for a grand finale release. Theo, ever eager to help, had been checking on them and, with a clumsy fumble, accidentally unlatched their little door. Suddenly, the hall was filled with the fluttering of wings and soft cooing as the doves took flight, creating a chaotic, yet undeniably adorable, scene. Children shrieked with delight, chasing the birds with gleeful abandon. Adults, less amused, ducked and dodged, attempting to avoid becoming avian targets. Theo, Daniel roared, playfully pursuing one of the escapees. It was an accident, Theo protested, his hands raised in mock surrender. Ashley, despite the unfolding pandemonium, couldn't help but burst into laughter. This kind of stuff only happens to us? She chuckled, wiping a tear from her eye. Robert, shaking his head with amusement, joined in. I think people are going to remember this event. Absolutely, Ashley agreed, her laughter contagious. After a considerable amount of effort, and with the combined strategy of coaxing, gentle corralling, and the promise of birdseed, the doves were finally coaxed back into their enclosure. The event continued, now infused with a spirit of levity and a distinct lack of formality. When it was time for Robert's speech, he confidently strode onto the stage. But just as he was about to begin, disaster, or perhaps fate, struck again. Ashley, in her tireless effort to ensure everything was perfect, tripped over a microphone cord while adjusting a nearby chair. She lost her balance, her arms windmilling as she careened towards the centerpiece of the dessert table. A magnificent, three-tiered cake, a testament to the baker's skill and artistry. It all seemed to unfold in slow motion, a scene lifted from a comedic film. Robert, seeing the impending catastrophe, reacted instinctively. He lunged forward, his arms outstretched, and caught her just in the nick of time, preventing her from face-planting into the sugary masterpiece. They remained frozen for a moment, an accidental tableau. Ashley, safe in Robert's arms, their faces mere inches apart, the sweet scent of vanilla filling the air. Thank you, she whispered, her voice barely audible. You're welcome, he replied softly, his gaze locked on hers. The room erupted in applause. The guests, convinced it was a pre-planned part of the entertainment, cheered their performance. From the back of the room, Theo, oblivious to the romantic undercurrent, shouted, "Dad, save the cake." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Ashley and Robert, blushing slightly, stepped apart, their smiles a mixture of embarrassment and amusement. When Robert finally began his speech, he abandoned the prepared notes, opting instead to speak from the heart. He spoke passionately about Happy Corner, about the vulnerable children who depended on their support, and about how Ashley had shown him the true meaning of generosity. Sometimes we forget that a person's worth isn't about what they possess, but what they do with what they have, he said, his eyes fixed on Ashley, his voice thick with emotion. And I was lucky enough to meet someone who taught me that. Ashley wiped away a tear, deeply moved by his words. The children from the daycare, sensing the sincerity in his voice, began to clap, and soon the entire room was on their feet, applauding. The event was a resounding success. They raised more money than anticipated, and numerous guests volunteered their time and resources to support Happy Corner on a long-term basis. As the last of the guests departed, Robert, Ashley, and Theo found themselves alone in the cavernous hall, surrounded by the remnants of the celebration. Deflated balloons, scattered confetti, and the quiet hum of contented exhaustion. "We did it," Ashley exclaimed, her face radiant with a triumphant smile. "We sure did," Robert agreed, his eyes mirroring her joy. Theo, succumbing to the fatigue of the day, yawned widely and leaned his head against Ashley's shoulder, his small body heavy with sleep. "It was the best day," he mumbled, already half asleep. As the two adults exchanged a lingering look, something shifted in the atmosphere. A subtle but undeniable change. The energy between them was no longer merely friendly. It was something deeper, something more profound, something undeniably real. And they both knew it. In the days that followed the event, life seemed to find a delicate equilibrium. Happy Corner was thriving, buoyed by the generous donations and newfound community support. Ashley was practically glowing, her joy radiating from within. And Robert felt a sense of fulfillment he hadn't experienced in years, a quiet satisfaction in having done something truly meaningful. But tranquility, it seemed, was a fragile thing, especially when observed from afar by eyes filled with jealousy. Bianca had been relentlessly scrolling through social media, her gaze fixated on the photos from the event. She saw Robert and Ashley smiling together, their faces alight with happiness. She devoured every detail of Robert's speech, cringing at the effusive compliments he had showered upon Ashley. Each word, each image, each positive comment felt like a carefully placed dagger twisting in her heart. She sat alone in her opulent apartment, the epitome of luxury, but her face was contorted with bitter anger as she stared at the photos on her phone. "So that's how it is," she hissed to herself, her voice laced with venom. "He tests me, humiliates me, and now he's all in love with the nanny." With a violent gesture, she flung the phone onto the plush velvet couch and began to pace back and forth, her expensive heels clicking against the marble floor. She wasn't going to accept this. Not after everything she had invested in her relationship with Robert, all the time, energy, and carefully constructed image. She snatched the phone back up and dialed a familiar number. "Jennifer, I need a favor." The next morning, Robert was engrossed in reviewing contracts in his office when Daniel burst in, his face etched with concern. "Robert, we've got a problem." "What kind of problem?" Robert asked, his voice betraying a hint of unease. Daniel placed a tablet on the desk, the screen displaying a jarring headline from a local news website. "Billionaire's nanny accused of misusing charity funds." Robert felt his stomach clench, a cold knot forming in his gut. "What?" "Keep reading," Daniel urged, his voice grim. The article, filled with carefully crafted innuendo and outright lies, claimed that Ashley had diverted a portion of the charitable donations for her personal use. It quoted anonymous sources who claimed to possess irrefutable proof of suspicious transactions. And, of course, there were strategically chosen photos of her at the event, accompanied by captions that subtly suggested she was using the funds to promote herself and advance her own agenda. "This is absurd," Robert declared, his voice rising with fury. She didn't touch a cent. All the money went straight to the daycare. I know, but the internet doesn't, and it's spreading fast, Daniel replied, his eyes glued to the screen. Robert grabbed his phone and saw that the story already had thousands of shares. The comments section a cesspool of cruelty, vitriol, and unsubstantiated accusations. People were calling Ashley a fraud, an opportunist, a gold digger, the worst adjectives imaginable. Who would do this? Robert asked, though he already suspected the answer. Daniel sighed, his gaze meeting Robert's. I have a good guess. Robert clenched his fists, his knuckles turning white. Bianca. It has to be. Just then, Robert's phone rang. It was Ashley. He answered immediately, his voice filled with concern. Ashley, I saw the article. It's all lies. I'm going to. I know it's lies, she interrupted, her voice trembling, barely holding back sobs. But nobody else knows that. People are calling me, sending awful messages. There are people outside my house, Robert. I don't know what to do. Robert felt a tightness in his chest, a wave of protectiveness washing over him. Stay there. I'm sending security to you right now, and I'll fix this. How? She asked, her voice laced with despair. The internet already decided I'm guilty. I'll prove it's not true. Trust me. There was a long pause, the silence filled with unspoken fears and uncertainties. All right, she finally whispered, her voice barely audible before she hung up. Robert immediately contacted the head of security and dispatched 2 guards to Ashley's house, instructing them to ensure her safety and privacy. Then he turned to Daniel, his eyes blazing with determination. Can you trace where this story originated? I need to know who's behind this. I'm already on it, Daniel replied, his fingers flying across the keyboard. While Daniel worked tirelessly to uncover the source of the smear campaign, Robert paced the room, desperately trying to devise a solution. But before he could formulate a coherent plan, his phone rang again. This time it was the company's board of directors. Mr. Marshall, we need to speak with you regarding your son's nanny, a stern voice said from the other end of the line. Robert closed his eyes, bracing himself for the inevitable. I'm listening. The accusations are damaging the company's image. We need you to publicly distance yourself from her until this matter is cleared up. Robert's jaw tightened. No. Mr. Marshall, with all due respect. No, Robert interrupted, his voice firm and unwavering. She's innocent, and I won't abandon her. So, you're saying you trust her more than the company's reputation? The voice pressed, the disapproval palpable. Robert hesitated for a fraction of a second, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. But it was enough. I need time to investigate, he said, attempting to buy himself some room to maneuver. Understood, the voice replied, cold and unforgiving. But in the meantime, we strongly suggest you keep your distance from Miss Carter. The line went dead, leaving Robert standing in stunned silence, the weight of their expectations crushing him. Daniel looked at him, his expression a mixture of concern and disappointment. You're not really going to walk away from her, are you? Of course not, Robert snapped, his voice laced with defensiveness. But I need proof first. I can't just blindly defend her without any evidence. Robert, she needs you now, Daniel countered, his voice filled with urgency. If you hesitate, you'll lose her. Trust me, I've seen this play out before. But Robert was torn, caught between his loyalty to Ashley and the immense pressure from the board, the media, and the looming threat to his company. Everything felt like it was spiraling out of control, threatening to unravel everything he had worked so hard to build. That afternoon, Ashley, weary of the constant barrage of accusations and the relentless scrutiny, made a decision of her own. She showed up at Robert's house, her eyes red and swollen from crying, her face pale and drawn. Theo, seeing her, ran to hug her, his small arms wrapping around her legs. Ashley, you're back, he exclaimed, his voice filled with relief. She hugged him tightly, her heart aching at the sight of his innocent face. Hi, sweetheart, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Robert came down the stairs, surprised to see her. "Ashley, you didn't have to come. I was going to see you." "No, I had to come," she replied, releasing Theo and standing up straight, facing Robert. "I came to resign." "What? No," Robert protested, taking a step towards her. "Robert, I can't work here anymore." "Not after this," she said, her voice trembling. She wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. "You hesitated, didn't you?" "What do you mean?" Robert asked, confused. "When the board called, Daniel told me. You hesitated to defend me," she said, her voice laced with disappointment. Robert felt like he'd been punched in the gut, the air knocked out of his lungs. "Ashley, that's not what happened." "Yes, it is," she insisted, shaking her head. "And I get it. You have a company, a reputation to protect. I'm just the nanny. I'm expendable." She gave a sad smile. "But I can't stay in a place where I'm not trusted. I can't live with that." Theo, overhearing their conversation, began to cry, his face crumpling with distress. "No, Ashley, you can't leave." Ashley knelt down and gently cupped his face in her hands. "Sweetheart, I'm going to miss you terribly, but sometimes things change. I can't explain why, but it's for the best." "But who's going to sing me to sleep?" he wailed, tears streaming down his face. "Who's going to make funny pancakes?" She hugged him tightly, her own tears flowing freely. "You'll find someone. Someone will fill my place, I promise." "I don't want someone else," he sobbed. "I want you." Robert stood there, heartbroken, unable to find the right words to comfort either of them. He felt like he was losing everything that mattered to him. Ashley stood up, gave Robert one last, lingering look, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and resignation, and said, "Take good care of him," and with a heavy heart, she walked out the door, leaving a void in the house that seemed impossible to fill. Theo stood frozen, shocked and disbelieving. Then, turning to his father, his eyes filled with tears and anger, he cried, "You let her leave, Dad? You let Ashley leave?" He pounded his small fist against his leg in frustration. "Now, who's going to sing me to sleep?" Robert knelt down, trying to hug his son, but Theo pushed him away, his small body stiff with anger. "I don't want you," he shouted, his voice cracking with emotion. "I want Ashley." And with that, he ran to his room, slamming the door behind him, leaving Robert alone in the hallway, the silence pressing in around him like a physical weight. Daniel appeared, his arms crossed, his expression disapproving. "You really let that happen?" "I know," Robert replied, his voice laced with guilt and regret. "She was the best thing that ever happened to you and Theo, and you let her go because of fear," Daniel continued, his voice rising in frustration. "I know," Robert shouted, his emotions boiling over. "I know, Daniel, but what do I do now?" Daniel shook his head, his gaze unwavering. "You fix it, Robert. You fix it however you can, because if you don't, you're going to lose her forever. And you'll never forgive yourself." Robert went upstairs and stopped at Theo's bedroom door. He could hear the boy quietly sobbing inside, his small body racked with grief. Robert leaned his forehead against the door, his heart heavy with remorse. He had lost more than an employee. He had lost the person who had brought color back into his and his son's lives. The person who made Theo smile, who made Robert feel human again. And now she was gone because of him. The next morning, Robert had barely slept. He had spent the entire night tossing and turning, replaying the events of the day, agonizing over the choices he had made, and desperately trying to figure out how to fix the mess he had created. He went down to the kitchen and found Theo sitting at the table, his arms crossed, his face a mask of sullen anger. He was still furious, still grieving the loss of Ashley. "Good morning, champ," Robert said softly, attempting to bridge the gap between them. Theo didn't answer. He simply looked away, his gaze fixed on some distant point beyond the kitchen window. Robert sighed and sat down beside him, his heart aching at the sight of his son's misery. "Theo, I know you're mad at me, and you have every right to be," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. But I need your help. Theo finally looked at him, his expression skeptical despite his hurt. Help with what? To bring Ashley back, Robert replied, his voice filled with hope. The boy's eyes lit up, a flicker of excitement replacing the sadness. Really? Really? Robert confirmed, nodding his head. But first, we have to prove she's innocent. We have to clear her name and show everyone that those accusations were lies. And for that, I'm going to need a very smart assistant. Someone who's not afraid to get their hands dirty and who's willing to do whatever it takes to get to the truth. Robert held out his hand, his eyes pleading for forgiveness and cooperation. What do you say? Are you with me? Theo looked at his father's hand, his expression thoughtful. Then, with a determined glint in his eyes, he shook it firmly. Okay, he said, his voice resolute, but only because it's for Ashley. Fair enough, Robert replied, his heart swelling with gratitude and love. Daniel walked into the kitchen, already holding a cup of coffee, his expression curious. So, what's the plan, detectives? How are we going to clear Ashley's name and bring her back? Robert stood up, his eyes shining with determination. We need to find out who spread those lies, who fabricated those accusations, and expose them to the world. And I have a pretty strong idea who it was. Bianca, Daniel said, stating the obvious. Exactly, Robert replied, nodding his head. Theo jumped from his chair, his energy returning, his face alight with excitement. Are we going to spy on her? He asked, his voice filled with enthusiasm. Like in the movies? Are we going to wear disguises and sneak around? Robert hesitated, unsure about involving Theo in their investigation. Not exactly spy, he began, trying to downplay the potentially risky nature of their plan. Yes, we're going to spy, Theo declared, cutting him off with a mischievous grin. We're going to follow her, listen to her conversations, and uncover all her secrets. Theo ran off to his room, his footsteps echoing through the house. I need my detective gear, Daniel laughed, shaking his head with amusement. This should be interesting. A few minutes later, Theo reappeared, wearing an oversized trench coat that nearly swallowed him whole, a felt hat that covered half his face, and a crooked, fake mustache precariously stuck above his lip. Robert blinked, trying to suppress a smile. Theo, what are you wearing? My detective disguise, he announced proudly, adjusting the mustache that was already threatening to fall off. Now no one will recognize me. I'm completely anonymous. Daniel crouched down to his level, his eyes twinkling with amusement. Theo, you look like a cartoon detective. You look like you stepped straight out of a comic book. Exactly. Theo grinned, puffing out his chest with pride. That's the point. No one will suspect a thing. Robert shook his head, but couldn't help smiling at his son's infectious enthusiasm. All right, let's go, detective. We have a villain to unmask. Detective Theo corrected, adjusting his hat with a flourish. The first step was to find out where the false story had originated. Daniel had already traced the article back to the journalist who had published it, Jennifer Hayes. As suspected, she was a close friend of Bianca's, the connection all but confirming their suspicions. So, Bianca's definitely involved, Daniel said, displaying the intricate web of connections on his computer screen. But we need solid proof. We need something concrete that we can use to expose her lies. How do we get that? Theo asked, adjusting the fake mustache that was constantly slipping off his face. Robert thought for a moment, considering their options. We need Bianca to confess, he said, his eyes narrowing with determination. We need to trick her into revealing the truth. Or, if we can't do that, we need to find proof of the fake transfers she made up, some kind of document or record that exposes her scheme. Or both, Daniel suggested, his voice laced with optimism. Theo raised his hand, as if he were in school, eager to share his brilliant idea. I have an idea. Robert raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Oh, do you? What is it? We pretend we believe her lies, Theo explained, his eyes shining with excitement. We act like we think Ashley really did steal the money. Then she'll get confident and cocky, and she'll tell us everything. She'll brag about how she tricked us and how smart she is. Daniel and Robert exchanged impressed glances, surprised by the boy's cunning strategy. That's not a bad idea, Daniel admitted, his voice filled with respect. It might actually work. See? Theo exclaimed, puffing out his chest with pride. I told you I was good at this. I'm a natural detective. He adjusted his hat, striking a heroic pose. Robert picked up his phone and dialed Bianca's number. She answered on the third ring, her voice way too sweet and innocent to be genuine. Robert, what a surprise. Bianca, we need to talk, Robert said, his voice calm and controlled. In person. Of course, darling, Bianca replied, her voice dripping with false concern. Anything for you. When? Today, Robert said, his voice firm. At the downtown cafe. I'll be there. He hung up the phone, his heart pounding in his chest. Daniel looked at him, his expression anxious. Are you sure about this? It's a risky move. She's not stupid. No, I'm not sure, Robert admitted, his voice laced with uncertainty. But it's the only chance we've got. We have to try something. Theo jumped up, eager to be involved. I'm going, he declared, grabbing his trench coat and hat. I need to see the villain up close. I want to be there when we catch her. Theo, you can't go, Robert said, shaking his head. She'll recognize you. She knows who you are. Not with my disguise, Theo protested, adjusting his mustache and sunglasses. I'll be completely unrecognizable. Robert sighed, torn between his desire to protect Theo and his need for his help. But Daniel stepped in, intervening on Theo's behalf. Let him come, he said, his voice persuasive. We'll sit at a table on the other side of the cafe. He can be our lookout. He can keep an eye on Bianca and warn us if anything goes wrong. Lookout? Theo repeated, his eyes widening with excitement. Yes, I'll be the lookout. I'll be watching everything. Nothing will get past me. He struck a superhero pose, ready for action. At 1 o'clock sharp, everyone was in position at the cafe. Robert sat at a table near the window, his face grim, waiting for Bianca to arrive. Daniel and Theo sat at a table in the back, both trying to look casual, but failing miserably. Theo still wore the fake mustache and sunglasses, drawing attention to himself with every move he made. Theo, you're drawing more attention to yourself like this, Daniel whispered, trying to discreetly pull the mustache down. You look ridiculous. But no one knows who I am, Theo protested, crossing his arms defensively. I'm completely incognito. Everyone knows who you are, Daniel replied, shaking his head with amusement. You're the only one here wearing a fake mustache and sunglasses indoors. You look like a character from a bad comedy. Theo crossed his arms, pouting, but stubbornly refused to take off the disguise. He was committed to his role as a detective and nothing was going to deter him. Bianca showed up right on time, dressed to the nines as always. She sat down across from Robert, her face radiating a false smile. So, what did you want to talk about? She asked, her voice dripping with manufactured sweetness. Robert kept his voice calm and even carefully playing his part. About Ashley, he said, his eyes fixed on Bianca's. About the accusations against her. Bianca feigned concern, her expression carefully crafted to convey sincerity. Oh yes, she said, shaking her head sadly. Terrible, isn't it? Who would have thought she could do something like that? You really think she did it? Robert asked, his voice laced with doubt. Well, the evidence is pretty clear, isn't it? Bianca replied, her eyes narrowing slightly. I mean, all those suspicious transactions, the missing funds. It all points to her. Does it? Robert leaned forward, his gaze intense. Because I've reviewed every account from the event. Every penny is accounted for. There's no missing money. Everything balances perfectly. Bianca hesitated, her smile faltering for a split second. But she quickly recovered, regaining her composure. Maybe she was smart enough to hide it, she said, her voice regaining its confidence. Maybe she used a different account, or maybe she transferred the money somewhere we can't trace. Or maybe, Robert said, his voice low and dangerous. Maybe someone made the whole thing up. Maybe someone fabricated those accusations, created fake documents, and spread lies to ruin Ashley's reputation. Bianca's smile vanished completely, replaced by a look of cold fury. Why would anyone do that? She demanded, her voice rising with indignation. Jealousy? Robert replied, his eyes boring into hers. Revenge. Spite. You tell me. Bianca stood up, offended, her face flushed with anger. Are you accusing me? She demanded, her voice trembling. I'm just asking questions, Robert replied, his voice unwavering. I don't have to listen to this, she exclaimed, grabbing her purse and storming out of the cafe, slamming the door behind her. Theo and Daniel walked over to Robert's table, their expressions a mixture of disappointment and curiosity. She didn't confess, Theo said, his voice tinged with disappointment. She didn't tell us anything. Not yet, Robert replied, his eyes fixed on the door through which Bianca had just exited. But now she's nervous. She knows we're onto her. And nervous people make mistakes. They get careless. They slip up. And I know exactly what mistake she's going to make, Daniel added with a confident smile. Back at the office, Daniel put his hacking skills to work, or, well, not exactly hacking, but using his extensive network of contacts to gain access to the messages exchanged between Bianca and the journalist Jennifer Hayes. Here it is, he said, pointing to the screen, his voice filled with triumph. The messages between them. The whole conspiracy laid bare. Robert read the messages, his blood boiling with anger. It was all there in black and white. Bianca had literally paid Jennifer to publish the fake story, providing her with fabricated documents and carefully crafted lies. This is enough, Robert said, his voice trembling with rage. This is all the proof we need. We can take this to the police. We can file a lawsuit. We can ruin her life. Even better, Daniel suggested, his eyes gleaming with a vengeful light. We can expose her publicly, just like she did to Ashley. We can use the same tactics she used to clear Ashley's name and show the world what kind of person she really is. Theo, who had been drawing in a notebook, looked up, his face lighting up with excitement. We're going to unmask the villain, he declared, his voice filled with glee. We're going to expose her evil plans and show everyone who she really is. Robert smiled, his heart swelling with pride at his son's unwavering support. Exactly, he said. We're going to show the world the truth. They spent the rest of the day preparing their counterattack. Daniel meticulously organized the evidence, ensuring everything was airtight and legally sound. Robert reached out to trustworthy journalists, individuals he knew would report the story fairly and accurately. And Theo made hand-drawn signs that said, Ashley is innocent, with colorful heart doodles and glitter glue. Theo, I'm not sure we'll need signs, Robert said, trying not to laugh, as he watched his son carefully apply glitter to a particularly large heart. This isn't a parade. We do need signs, Theo insisted, holding up a sign proudly. It's for when we go on TV. We're going to hold up the signs and tell everyone how much we love Ashley. We're not going on TV, Robert said, shaking his head. Not yet, anyway. Theo held up the sign proudly, his face beaming with enthusiasm. But maybe we will. You never know. It's important to be prepared. That night, after Theo had finally gone to bed, Robert and Daniel reviewed everything one more time, making sure every detail was perfect. Tomorrow we'll go to the daycare, Robert said, his voice resolute. I'm going to hold a press conference there. I'm going to present the evidence, expose Bianca's lies, and clear Ashley's name publicly, once and for all. Daniel nodded, his expression serious. And Bianca, she'll have to answer for what she did. She won't be able to hide from the truth anymore. Robert fell silent, his thoughts turning to Ashley. He had cleared her name, exposed the lies, and avenged her honor. But there was still one question that haunted him, one uncertainty that overshadowed everything else. And Ashley? he said, his voice low and filled with doubt. Do you think she'll forgive me? Robert went quiet, his gaze lost in the distance. That was the question that had been haunting him since Ashley had walked out the door. Even if he proved she was innocent, even if he exposed Bianca's lies, would she ever trust him again? Would she ever be able to forgive him for hesitating, for doubting her, for putting his own interests ahead of hers? I don't know, he admitted, his voice barely audible. But I have to try. I have to do everything I can to win her back. Because I realize now that she's more important to me than anything else in the world. Daniel placed a hand on his friend's shoulder, his expression filled with empathy. You'll do it, he said, his voice firm and reassuring. You'll do it because this time you're doing the right thing. You're putting Ashley first without hesitation. And that's all that matters. Robert nodded, his heart filled with a flicker of hope. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but he was determined to do whatever it took to win back Ashley's trust and prove that he was worthy of her love. The next morning, he woke Theo up early, his face beaming with excitement. The boy was ecstatic, holding up the signs he had carefully crafted the day before. Today's the day, Dad, he exclaimed, his voice filled with anticipation. We're going to save Ashley. We're going to clear her name and bring her home. We're going to try, champ, Robert replied, smiling at his son's unwavering enthusiasm. We're going to give it our best shot. They went to the daycare where Daniel had already set everything up. There were reporters, cameras, and even some of the kids from Happy Corner, curious about all the commotion. Robert stepped up onto a small makeshift platform, with Theo standing proudly beside him, holding a sign that read, Ashley is innocent. The cameras began recording, their lenses focused on him, waiting for him to speak. Good morning, everyone. Robert began, his voice steady and confident. I'm here today to clear up an injustice. A terrible lie has been spread about a good and honest woman, and it's time for the truth to be told. Ashley Carter, he continued, his voice filled with emotion, was falsely accused of misusing funds, of stealing from the very children she dedicated her life to helping. And I'm here to tell you that those accusations are completely and utterly false. I have proof that those accusations were made up, that they were part of a deliberate and malicious attempt to ruin her reputation. He presented the documents, the messages between Bianca and the journalist, and the bank statements, all of which clearly demonstrated that Ashley had been the victim of a vicious smear campaign. The crowd went silent, taking it all in, their expressions shifting from skepticism to shock. Bianca Reynolds, Robert continued, his voice filled with anger and disgust, made up these accusations out of personal revenge. She was jealous of Ashley, she was envious of her kindness and compassion, and she wanted to destroy her happiness. And Jennifer Hayes, the journalist who published the story, was complicit in her scheme. She printed those lies without checking the facts, without caring about the damage she was causing. Both of them will be held legally responsible for their actions. The cameras clicked and whirred, capturing every word, every gesture, every expression on Robert's face. The reporters scribbled notes frantically, eager to break the story. Theo, unable to contain himself any longer, grabbed the microphone, his face beaming with pride. And Ashley is the best nanny in the world, he declared, his voice ringing with sincerity. And my dad was silly, but now he's fixing it. Laughter echoed through the crowd, breaking the tension. Robert smiled, a bit embarrassed, but also grateful for his son's unwavering support. When the press conference ended, Daniel walked up to Robert, his expression filled with admiration. You did the right thing, he said, clapping him on the back. You finally stood up for what you believe in, without hesitation. I hope so, Robert replied, his voice laced with anxiety. But there was still one thing left to do. One thing that mattered more than anything else. Find Ashley, Daniel said, nodding his head, and beg for her forgiveness. After the press conference, Robert knew he had taken the first step towards redemption. He had cleared Ashley's name in public, exposed the lies, and avenged her honor. But he also knew that it wasn't enough. He needed to talk to her face to face, to apologize for his mistakes, and to beg for her forgiveness. The problem was, finding her proved to be more difficult than he had anticipated. Ashley wasn't answering her phone. She had shut down her social media accounts. It was like she had vanished into thin air. She's probably at her apartment, Daniel suggested, or maybe she's staying with a friend. Somewhere she can be alone and process everything that's happened. I tried the apartment, Robert replied, shaking his head. She didn't answer the door. I knocked for a long time, but there was no sign of her. I'm worried about her, Daniel. I don't know where else to look. Theo, who was sitting on the couch, eating cookies, suddenly raised his hand, his face lighting up with a brilliant idea. I know where she is, he exclaimed, his voice filled with excitement. Robert turned, his heart leaping with hope. You do? Where? Of course. Theo replied, his eyes widening. She always said that when she was sad, she went to the park near the daycare. The one with the colorful swings. She said it made her feel better to watch the kids play and swing. Robert and Daniel exchanged surprised glances. Why didn't you say anything earlier? Robert asked, his voice tinged with frustration. Theo shrugged, his face innocent. No one asked me. 20 minutes later, Robert was at the park. It was a simple place, mostly visited by children and families. There were swings, a worn-out slide, and wooden benches shaded by the trees. And there, sitting on one of the swings, was Ashley. She was swinging slowly, her feet dragging on the ground, her eyes lost in thought. She wore jeans and a simple blouse, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. She looked tired and sad. Here's the rewritten and expanded translation. I was so sorry for what I put you through. The truth is, I tested you, Ashley, because I was terrified, utterly afraid that no one could ever truly love me for who I was deep down. I was haunted by the fear that everyone around me was just after the money, the image, the lifestyle. You walked away from all of that. You stepped off that stage and walked right toward her. But you reminded me of something vital, something I'd completely forgotten. That there are genuinely good people in this world. People who choose to do the right thing, not because of what they might gain, but simply because that's who they fundamentally are. And I almost lost you because of my own crippling fear. I nearly ruined the single best thing that has ever happened to me and to Theo. Ashley's eyes welled with tears, reflecting the sincerity of his words. I'm not even asking you to love me, Robert. I'm not even asking you to come back and work for me. He gently took her hands in his touch a silent plea. I'm just asking for a chance, Ashley. A chance to actually show you that I can be the man you deserve. The man both of you deserve. The silence that followed was palpable. Even the children seemed to sense the weight of the moment, stilling their play, waiting. Ashley wiped her eyes, and a small smile flickered through her tears. You're a fool, Robert Marshall, you know that? He let out a nervous laugh, the sound laced with vulnerability. I know, a stubborn, proud fool who took way too long to see what was right in front of him. I know. But she squeezed his hands, her touch reassuring. You're also brave, Robert, because owning up to your mistakes is hard, and you just did it in front of everyone. Her eyes searched his. So, do you forgive me? Ashley smiled, a genuine smile that radiated through her entire being, and the light returned to her eyes. Yes, Robert, I forgive you. Relief washed over Robert, so profound that he felt weak in the knees. He pulled her into a tight hug, burying his face in her hair, and Ashley hugged him back just as fiercely. Theo, who had been watching everything unfold from the edge of the stage, couldn't contain himself any longer. He grabbed the microphone again, his voice booming through the room. Now you can kiss. The room erupted in laughter and applause, the tension of the moment dissolving into joyous celebration. Ashley and Robert stepped apart, both blushing but beaming. This boy is impossible, Ashley murmured, shaking her head but her eyes full of affection. He gets it from me, Robert joked, winking at her. They laughed together, the sound echoing through the room. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of applause, genuine laughter, and overflowing love, everything finally clicked into place. The pieces of the puzzle aligned. The test was over and love, real love, had undeniably won. 3 months had passed since that transformative day at the daycare center, and everything had irrevocably changed. Robert's mansion, once a cold, quiet, and formal space, was now buzzing with life and energy. Laughter echoed through the halls, bouncing off the walls. Off-key music drifted from the kitchen, a chaotic symphony of domestic bliss. And someone, usually Theo, was always running from room to room, a whirlwind of youthful exuberance. Ashley had come back, not as a nanny burdened by a secret, but as the official coordinator of the Happy Corner outreach program. She worked closely and directly with Robert to expand the program to reach even more centers across the city, fueled by a shared passion for making a difference. And yes, she and Robert were officially and very publicly dating. Theo celebrated the news like he had won the lottery, his joy infectious. He danced around the living room, a blur of limbs and excitement, declaring, "I knew it! I always knew it." That particular morning, Robert woke to the cheerful, albeit slightly jarring, sound of pans clanging in the kitchen. He made his way downstairs, drawn by the commotion, and found Ashley attempting to make pancakes, a determined look on her face, while Theo was helping crack eggs, with half the yolk and whites ending up in the bowl and the other half splattered artistically across the floor. "Good morning, family," Robert said from the doorway, a wide smile spreading across his face. Ashley turned, her hair adorably disheveled, a streak of flour adorning her cheek like war paint. "Good morning. We're making surprise breakfast." "Surprise?" Robert raised an eyebrow, surveying the messy kitchen with amusement. "I'd say it's more like an organized disaster." Theo proudly raised his flour-covered hands. "It's culinary art, Dad. You just don't get it." Ashley laughed and playfully tossed a dish towel at Robert. "Stop complaining and come help. We need all the hands we can get." He grabbed the towel, joining the chaotic but loving scene. Together, they somehow managed to create a decent stack of pancakes. Some were lopsided, some were slightly burnt around the edges, but all were undoubtedly made with love. While they ate their slightly unconventional breakfast, Theo suddenly announced, "Today is going to be a big day." "Oh, why is that?" Robert asked, taking a sip of his orange juice. "Because today we're going to Happy Corner to see the final renovations, and I'm going to show everyone my drawing on the wall," Theo declared with unwavering enthusiasm. Ashley smiled, her eyes shining with pride. "That's right. Today is the official opening of the new library." Robert reached across the table and gently took her hand in his. "You did an amazing job with this project, Ashley." "We did," she corrected him softly, her gaze warm. "It was a team effort, Robert." Theo raised his juice glass high. A toast to the best team in the world. The three of them clinked their glasses together, the sound filled with laughter and genuine affection. Later that morning, they went to the daycare together, a united front. The place had undergone a remarkable transformation. The rooms were painted in bright, cheerful colors. The toys were brand new and, most importantly, safe. And the library was incredibly cozy, filled with colorful, inviting pillows and sturdy bookshelves overflowing with stories. Children ran around, their faces lit up with amazement and excitement as they explored their new surroundings. Theo eagerly took on the role of official tour guide, showing off every corner of the daycare like he owned the place, his enthusiasm boundless. "And this is the art room, where I painted that giant picture," he announced proudly, pointing to an abstract painting on the wall. "It's a dragon? Or a dog? I haven't really decided yet," Ashley whispered to Robert, trying to suppress a smile. I think it's a mix of both." Robert chuckled quietly. "Let's call it a dragig." She lightly tapped his arm, her eyes sparkling with affection. "Stop it, Robert." While the children played, their laughter filling the air, Ashley and Robert sat on one of the benches in the daycare's garden, enjoying a moment of quiet togetherness. The sun was warm on their skin, and there was a palpable feeling of peace and contentment in the air. "Are you happy, Ashley?" Robert asked softly, gently holding her hand. Ashley smiled, her heart overflowing with emotion. Very. More than I ever thought I could be, Robert. Me too, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He raised her hand to his lips and kissed it tenderly. Thank you for giving me this chance. Thank you, she replied, her eyes searching his. For learning how to trust Robert. They sat there in a comfortable silence, simply enjoying each other's company, watching the children play and be children. Suddenly, Theo came running towards them, slightly out of breath. Ashley, come see. There's a new girl, and she wants to meet you. Ashley stood up, her face lighting up with warmth, and left Robert alone on the bench. He watched her interact with the children, her movements so natural, her connection so genuine. And he felt a tightness in his chest, a sensation that he recognized now as pure, unadulterated happiness. Daniel sauntered over and sat down beside him on the bench, a knowing smile on his face. You've got that goofy look on your face again, buddy. What look? Robert asked, feigning innocence. The I'm the luckiest man in the world look. Daniel chuckled, nudging him playfully. And I am, Robert said, without a hint of hesitation. Daniel clapped him on the shoulder. Seriously, Robert, you've changed, and it's a damn good change. I've never seen you so happy. It's all thanks to her and Theo, Robert said, his gaze fixed on Ashley as she played with the children. They showed me there's more to life than just business, Daniel. Daniel gave his friend a sincere pat on the back. I'm really happy for you, man. You deserve this. That afternoon, back at the mansion, Theo was utterly exhausted from all the excitement of the day. He lay down on the couch, snuggling with one of his favorite toys. Best day ever, he murmured, his voice thick with sleepiness. Ashley gently covered him with a soft blanket. Rest up, champ. Theo sleepily grabbed her hand. Ashley? Yes, sweetheart? She replied softly, stroking his hair. You're going to stay with us forever, right? Ashley felt her eyes well up with tears, touched by his innocent vulnerability. I am, sweetheart. Promise. Good, he mumbled, his eyes already closed, a peaceful smile playing on his lips. Because you're part of the family now. Robert, who was standing in the doorway, felt a lump forming in his throat, his emotions threatening to overwhelm him. Family? That's exactly what they were now. When Theo finally drifted off to sleep, Ashley and Robert quietly slipped out to the garden, seeking a moment of peace. They sat on the grass, watching the sun slowly begin its descent, painting the sky in hues of orange, pink, and gold. Theo's right, you know, Robert said softly, breaking the comfortable silence. You are part of this family, Ashley. Ashley rested her head on his shoulder, her voice filled with warmth. And you and Theo are my family too, Robert. They stayed there in comfortable silence for a few moments, simply enjoying the tranquility of the evening. Then, Ashley sat up a little straighter, a nervous look crossing her face. Robert, I need to tell you something, she said, her voice slightly hesitant. He turned to her, instantly concerned. What is it, Ashley? Is everything okay? Everything's perfect, Robert. Actually, better than perfect, she said, taking a deep breath. I'm pregnant. Robert blinked, his mind struggling to process the information. Pregnant? Yes, she confirmed, her eyes searching his. 2 months along. Silence descended between them, thick and heavy. Ashley started to feel nervous, unsure of how he was truly taking the news. I know it's early, Robert, and we're still finding our rhythm, and maybe it's not the perfect time, but Robert cut her off with a tender kiss, silencing her doubts. When he pulled back, he was smiling from ear to ear, his eyes shining with pure joy. It's the perfect time, Ashley, he said, his voice filled with emotion. It's absolutely perfect. Really? She asked, her voice laced with disbelief. Really, Robert? He pulled her into another tight hug, burying his face in her hair. We're having a baby, Ashley. We're going to have a baby. Ashley laughed, the sound filled with relief and overwhelming happiness. We are. We really are. They stayed there, holding each other close, lost in their own world of joy, until they heard the sound of little footsteps behind them. They turned and saw Theo standing in the doorway, rubbing his sleepy eyes. "I heard voices," he mumbled, his face creased with curiosity. "What's going on?" Robert and Ashley exchanged a loving glance, a silent conversation passing between them. Then Robert reached out a hand to Theo. "Come here, champ. We've got some news for you." Theo walked closer, his curiosity piqued. "What news?" Ashley knelt down to his level, her voice soft and gentle. "Theo, you're going to be a big brother." Theo's eyes went wide with surprise. "A brother? Like for real?" "For real," Robert confirmed, smiling at his son. "There's going to be a baby in the family." Theo remained quiet for a moment, his mind seemingly trying to grasp the enormity of the news. Then, his face lit up with the biggest, most radiant smile they had ever seen. "I'm going to be a big brother," he shouted, jumping up and down with excitement. "I'm going to teach the baby how to be a superhero and how to do science experiments and how to build awesome forts." Ashley laughed, wiping the happy tears from her eyes. "Or it could be a girl, Theo. Doesn't matter," he declared, his enthusiasm undeterred. "I'm going to be the best big brother in the world." Robert hugged them both tightly, holding them close, his heart overflowing with love. And in that moment, surrounded by the two people he loved more than anything in the world, he knew he had finally found what he had always been searching for. Not in tests, not in money, not in control, but in love. True, simple, and pure, unadulterated love. Theo pulled back and looked at the two of them with that strange wisdom that only children seem to possess. "See, Dad?" he said, his voice filled with knowing. "I told you I needed a nanny. But now we got a family." Ashley and Robert laughed, their eyes shining with happy tears. "You've always been the smartest one out of the three of us, Theo," Robert said, ruffling his son's hair affectionately. The three of them embraced again, their family complete. 6 months had passed since that magical night in the garden. Ashley's belly was beautifully round and full, a testament to the new life growing within her. Theo spent his days talking to the baby, telling silly stories, and singing off-key songs he had learned from Ashley, his voice filled with love. "Hi, baby," Theo would say, resting his head gently against her belly. "Today I learned that dinosaurs were big, but not as big as Mommy Ashley's love." Ashley laughed, running her fingers through his hair. "You're going to confuse this baby before it's even born, Theo." "Impossible," Theo declared with unwavering confidence. "I'm the best big brother in the universe." Robert watched it all unfold from the doorway, his heart overflowing with joy and gratitude. But there was still one thing he had to do, something important, something that would make their family complete in every sense of the word. That afternoon, while Ashley was resting comfortably and Theo was at school, Robert made a call to Daniel. "I need your help, my friend. It's time." Daniel smiled on the other end of the line, his voice filled with anticipation. "Finally, Robert. I thought you'd never ask." 2 weeks later, Robert carefully planned a picnic at the very park where he had first met Ashley after the scandal. The park that held so many significant memories for them both. The same park with the colorful swings and the open sky. Theo, of course, was an integral part of the plan, his enthusiasm boundless. He proudly wore a t-shirt that proclaimed, "The best part is about to begin," and carried the picnic basket like it was a treasure of immense value. "Remember the plan, Theo?" Robert whispered, giving his son a reassuring squeeze. "You have to wait for the right moment." I know, Dad," Theo replied impatiently, making a motion like locking his lips and throwing away the key, signifying his commitment to secrecy. When Ashley arrived, dressed in a light, flowing pale pink dress that accentuated her pregnancy glow, she found the whole scene utterly adorable, her heart swelling with love. "A picnic? What a beautiful surprise, Robert," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with happiness. "I thought you deserved a special day, Ashley," Robert said, reaching out his hand to her. "A day just for us." They sat on the grass, enjoying the simple pleasure of eating sandwiches and fruit, laughing about old memories and the journey that had brought them to this point. Theo, however, was unusually fidgety, glancing at his dad every few seconds, his excitement barely contained. "Theo, are you okay?" Ashley asked, noticing his restlessness. "You look like you swallowed a cricket." "Me? I'm great," Theo replied a little too quickly, his cheeks flushed. "Super great. Never been better." She laughed, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "You're definitely hiding something, young man." "No, maybe just a little," Theo admitted, clapping his hand over his mouth as if he had revealed a state secret. Robert shook his head, smiling at his son's antics. It was now or never. He stood up, a wave of nervousness washing over him, and wiped his sweaty hands on his pants. "Ashley," he said, his voice slightly shaky, "there's something I want to tell you." She looked up at him, her eyes filled with love and curiosity. "What is it, Robert?" "When I met you, Ashley, I was lost," he began, his voice gaining strength as he spoke from the heart. "I didn't believe in real love anymore. I didn't trust people, and I only lived for my work, for the business." He reached out and gently held her hands in his touch conveying all the depth of his feelings. "But you changed everything, Ashley. You taught me to trust again, to love again, to be a better man, a better father. You showed me that life isn't about what we have, but about who we are and who we choose to love." Ashley's eyes filled with tears, her heart overflowing with emotion. "Robert." He got down on one knee, a gesture of profound love and commitment, and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "Ashley Carter, will you marry me?" Time seemed to stop, the world fading away as they locked eyes. Ashley covered her mouth with her hand, tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the moment. Theo, unable to contain himself any longer, jumped up, shouting with all his might, "Say yes, Ashley! Say yes! Say yes!" Ashley laughed through her tears, looking at Robert, then at Theo, then back at Robert again, her heart filled with an indescribable joy. "Yes, Robert. 1,000 times yes." Robert slipped the ring on her finger, a symbol of their eternal love, and before he could even stand up, Ashley pulled him into a passionate kiss, sealing their commitment with a tangible expression of love. The invisible audience, Daniel, who had been hiding behind a nearby tree with a camera, capturing every precious moment, cheered quietly, his heart filled with happiness for his friend. Theo jumped in between them, hugging them both tightly, his voice filled with pure, unadulterated joy. "We're going to be a real family now. We already were a family, champ," Robert said, ruffling his son's hair affectionately. "But now it's official." 3 months later, the wedding took place, a celebration of love, family, and new beginnings. It was simple, but exquisitely beautiful, held in the garden of the mansion, transformed into a whimsical wonderland. Colorful balloons floated in the air, wildflowers bloomed in abundance, and banners painted by the children from Cantino Feliz added a personal and heartfelt touch to the decorations. Theo, of course, was the ring bearer, dressed in a tiny suit with a crooked tie that he had insisted on tying himself, his pride evident. "I look very fancy," he declared, spinning around to show off his ensemble. Ashley was absolutely radiant, glowing with happiness and the joy of impending motherhood. Her dress was simple, white, and flowing, the perfect choice to complement her already beautiful, pregnant form. Her hair was styled in loose waves, adorned with delicate wildflowers woven throughout. She walked down the aisle, her face illuminated by a radiant smile, holding a bouquet of daisies, her steps light and graceful. When she reached the makeshift altar, Robert felt tears welling up in his eyes, overwhelmed by the sight of her beauty and the depth of his love. "You look absolutely beautiful, Ashley," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "So do you, Robert," she replied, her eyes sparkling with that playful smile that he adored. The ceremony was deeply emotional, filled with heartfelt vows and promises of eternal love. Daniel, the best man, delivered a hilarious speech about how Robert used to be an emotionless robot before he met Ashley. bringing tears of laughter to everyone's eyes. When it was time for the vows, Robert took Ashley's hands in his gaze filled with unwavering love. "Ashley," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "I promise to love you every day, on the easy days and the hard ones. I promise to always trust you, to support you, and to make crooked pancakes for breakfast whenever you want. And I promise I'll never test you again, because I already know the answer. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me." Ashley wiped her eyes, laughing through her tears. "My turn," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "Robert, you came into my life when I least expected it, and you gave me a family, a home, and a love I never thought I deserved. I promise to love you, to make you laugh, and to sing out-of-tune songs for you for the rest of my life. Please don't." Someone in the crowd joked, prompting a wave of laughter that washed over the garden. When the officiant finally said, "You may kiss the bride," Theo shouted, before anyone else could. Finally! The kiss was long, passionate, and perfect, met with thunderous applause from all the guests. The reception was joyful, a celebration of love and family that continued late into the night. Children ran around the garden, their laughter echoing through the air. Adults danced with abandon, and there was an abundance of food, music, and merriment. "It really was," Robert agreed, wrapping his arm around Ashley, pulling her close. Ashley held both their hands in hers, her heart overflowing with love and gratitude. "Thank you both for everything," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Theo looked up at her, his eyes searching hers. "Are you really my mom now, Ashley?" Ashley felt her heart tighten with emotion. "If you want me to be, I am Theo," she said softly, her voice filled with sincerity. He wrapped his arms around her, hugging her tightly. "You always were, Ashley." The three of them stayed there, holding each other close, watching the party unfold around them, their family complete. Months later, when the baby was born, a beautiful little girl named Emma, Theo held his baby sister gently in his arms, his face filled with wonder and love. "Hi, Emma," he whispered, his voice soft and gentle. "I'm your big brother, and I'm going to teach you everything about being amazing." Robert and Ashley, standing hand in hand next to the crib, just smiled, their hearts overflowing with happiness. Because in the end, they had learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes, the biggest test in life is learning to trust the ones who truly love you. And when you finally learn that, everything changes for the better. What did you think of Robert and Ashley's story? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Rate the story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? Subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell to keep up with all our stories. And don't forget to check out more touching stories by clicking right here on the end screen.